Hello, Patreon. It's Genghis. Figured I'd take a little time away from making my mirrors to do the last portion of this pinup. At least this video. I was going to say pinup series, but I'm sure this isn't going to be the only pinup that I do. So this particular pinup, this will be the last video for her. So all we have left to do as far as her head goes is to cover hair. So there's two different ways that I usually execute hair. It really depends on if the pinup has lighter hair or darker hair. Usually with blondes, there isn't much of a contrast, so it's not as involved doing hair for a blonde. So we're going to go ahead and make her a brunette. That way you can kind of see a little bit better what I'm doing as far as highlights and shadows and all that other stuff. And on top of that too, one of the easiest ways for me to be able to show that is if I were to make her with curls. So we'll do like a nice little pretty wispy sort of curly hairdo on her, make it look really sexy, really pretty, so on and so forth. So, and also too, there's a couple of shadows that I'm probably going to end up adding too, so we'll go ahead and put those in there as well. So what we're going to do is, so let's go ahead and give her a little bit of sideburns. Okay. So when I'm tattooing and when I'm drawing, even when her hair is dark and there's going to be a lot of blocks of black, I still like to add some finer details around the frame of the face. You'll see a lot of the stuff that kind of gets pulled away from the face will begin to be a little bit more of a blocky sort of dark. And, but kind of towards the face, we're going to give her kind of more of a natural hairline. So let's go ahead and add some sideburns. Okay. Nice little wispy doos, you know, something very, very light on the hand. Okay. So how do we want her hair? Let's go ahead and give her a nice little hair flip. So okay. So let's see. We'll give her kind of a little part. We'll kind of stage how we're going to work her hair. So we'll give her not really bangs, but we'll give her something like a cute little hair flip. Okay. So after this is my cat. After we figure out, or if you mentally figure out what you want to do with hair, let's go ahead and add the hairline. So how we want the direction of the hair to kind of go is where it's ultimately going to flow. Okay. I'm just going to kind of lightly mark where her hair is going to be. Okay. And then, so if I'm flipping her hair to the side, those hairs are also going to head into the direction of where that hair is going to go. Sometimes when you see me doing kind of the, the free-handed pinups and stuff, you'll see me do this action with my hand, even though I'm not really marking the skin with any kind of ink. You'll see me do this motion, and that's kind of me thinking of how I'm going to do hair, especially since a lot of the freehand pinups, I'm kind of like sculpting them on the fly. Like a lot of them are not pre-planned. I'm just kind of just going based off of instinct. But if you see me like moving my hand, but you don't really see like any marks on the actual skin, that's me thinking really hard about how I want to execute something before it's executed, because of course tattoos are permanent. I mean, they're not so permanent now that you can get laser, but I'm an expensive artist. Who wants to spend all this money just to have to get it erased with laser? So, you know, I definitely need to be sure about what it is that I'm doing before I do it. So with paper, you can definitely get away with so much more. Like with these aren't necessarily the actual hair that's going to end up. I mean, well, I guess those marks are pretty good, but say if I were to mark something a little close to her eyebrows or a little too far away, these could be erased, or I can add, something on top of it that will essentially just cover the marks that I did. So these are not so much permanent, more so guidelines, but you definitely want these guidelines to flow in the direction of hair. It helps with the planning in your mind, and also too, it's just a good habit to pick up. Like you always want, like even her eyebrows, like when I sketch the eyebrows and stuff, a lot of times it's going in the direction of how the hair would actually go. So just if you don't do that already, definitely get into the habit of doing that. Okay, so we definitely want to make her, okay, so hair flip. So what I'm going to lightly do is kind of mark like the back of her head, you know, how I want it to be. She's going to have a part right here. Part's probably going to go all the way back there, you know. Beautiful, beautiful curls, beautiful, beautiful girl. You know, maybe make her bangs go up just a little bit. Beautiful, beautiful curls. You can see it's already making a very attractive woman. If you want, you can go ahead and add a neck. What we're probably going to end up doing with the hair is probably going to cover the rest of the neck and just kind of just frame the face. So it's kind of just going to imply that a body continues down without actually drawing the body. I'll definitely cover the bodies at some point. But for now, since we're kind of focusing more so on a face, on a gorgeous face, you definitely want to give her a neck, but we don't necessarily need to like go beyond that. And there's definitely ways of, you know, using the hair to just kind of imply that it goes further down, even though it really doesn't. Anywho, okay, so now let's see. Do we want her hair tucked behind her ear? Maybe we do. It's not really something that I do often. Let's go ahead and fix that ear. Usually the hair, I usually put it over the ears because I think ears are really ugly looking, but, you know, let's go ahead and, I don't know. In my mind, it just seems to make sense to just have her hair just kind of go behind her ear. She looks like she'd be the type to kind of just brush it behind. She looks smart and gorgeous, huh? Maybe she's reading a book and the hair's flopping in her face and she needs to tuck it behind her ears so she can look down again and read her romance novels. I don't know. Whatever. Anywho, so let's see. So we've created guidelines to where the hair is gonna go. So wherever there is a part in her hair, which would be here, like her bangs and the rest of her hair are gonna flip this way while the other half goes down this way. So knowing that, in here would remain kind of more like skin, while over here, okay, so how, hair is always so hard to explain. So, okay, so actually, let's just start off with this side, and then this part would make a little bit more sense. So we have what we want to do with the hairline. So let's go ahead and add where the hair is going to go. It's going to flow down. Okay, so around her edges, there's going to be little tiny hairs. You'll see me do this a lot with pinups where you'll have like these sort of, they're not really rogue baby hairs, but baby hairs coming out of dark. Because what I usually do with brunettes is I'll go in there and I'll make their hair really, 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 really dark. And I know this looks really scary what I'm doing, but this is exactly how I tattoo dark hair. And out of that dark, I will do like these lighter strands of baby hair to come out of it. So it just kind of just gives the pinup more of a natural hairline. So you see where I'm like dragging these little baby hairs out of the dark and how they fit what it was that I loosely sketched on her hairline. That's what you're going for. You want it to look like, you know, baby hairs are growing into more mature hair over here, but you don't want like just a blocky sort of hairline. It looks very counterfeit. It will make her look like she's wearing more of a wig. I just don't really like that look. So I'll definitely go in there out of the dark with more lighter baby hair. So basically that's how the edges of her hair is going to look. See, hopefully that makes sense, because back to this hair part, it's the same thing. So with the hair part though, you have this dark, okay? And it's kind of surrounding where her part goes, okay? But in her part, again, I'm sketching these little baby hairs. Again, for the tattoo artists that are following my Patreon, I think there's only one of you. But, you know, maybe later on there might be some of you that are just kind of like, you can't really see because of the shine, but for the ones that might tune in later who may be curious as to how I do hair, but it's just blocking off that black for the brunette and then going in for these little baby hairs to make the hair part and the hairline look a little bit more natural. So this shit right here is going to be hella black, and then just loosen it up and make it look lighter on the edges of her hair. So I'm going to go ahead and continue this all the way down, and I'll go ahead and continue in here, and then I'll show you how we're going to do the hair flip. The hair flip, it's basically the same thing. Like, we're blocking it out, but we also want to be mindful of where the hair connects to her head, and then you want to make it look a little bit more wispy. Now, when you're doing this, don't go far too out, because what we're also going to do is add highlights. If you black out where the highlights are going to go, you're not going to be able to put highlights in. To make the hair look like it's got movement or shape, highlights are pretty important, and knowing where to put them is even more important. You just can't put random highlights everywhere because it's just not going to look right. Even though there isn't like a defined light source, you can kind of fake it. Like, you don't really need like an exact source of light coming from somewhere, but if you know what you're doing, even if the light sourcing is off, it's still going to look natural. So let me go ahead and fill in the rest of her hairline. I'm going to tilt her a little bit so it's easier on my hand and I can see better, because all this right here, I want it black. Okay, so black, black, black. We're kind of getting down to her ear, where her ear is. Gonna kind of go into her sideburns. Okay, oh, that's black. From the black, we're doing all these little baby hairs. Just to kind of soften the edge of this. And if you need to go a little heavier, go a little heavier. You just don't want just a block of like black. You definitely don't want those edges, because that's just not what hair looks like. Okay, so I went a little heavier. Let's go ahead and have a little lighter ones coming out from there. Okay, okay, so she has a little bit more of a natural hairline. And then sometimes I'll just add random ones, because sometimes people have random hairs, little edges, whatever. Okay, so we have that. Go ahead and do where the part kind of meets. It's going to fade as it goes back. You probably get a little bit more dense as it heads back too. And then this is where her flip is. Add some hairs there. As far as the highlights go, I'll make it dark till about there. Okay. Definitely soften up where you blocked out that black. It'll just make it look a lot nicer if you did. Okay. So she's got her, let me tilt this because the lighting I know is weird. Excuse me. So we have her part, we have the edges over here, and now we're going to go ahead and do her bangs. So like I said, it's the same thing, except for the hair is kind of traveling different. Now, since there's most likely going to be a shadow in this area, I don't mind making this part super, 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 super dark. And if you notice, my hand either goes forward or back. The reason for that is just I kind of just go with however my hand naturally wants to go to get that stroke as light as possible. I do it with tattooing. Do it obviously with drawing. I I don't know, if your hand goes back or if it goes forward, like, I guess what I'm saying is if it goes this way, if it goes this way, do whichever way works for you. To me, I don't think it matters. Maybe it does. But again, like I said in my first video, this isn't really like classic training. This is kind of just how I've taught myself to do drawing. So, I kind of don't think that there's exact rules to stuff like that. But again, I could be wrong, whatever, you know. I know there's reasons for art schools and the reasons why they train people certain ways. It's just, I personally don't draw that way. So I apologize if it doesn't make any sense. It's just, this is just the only way that I've ever known. Okay, so let's see. This is where all the crazy thinking is going to start happening, is where all of the shadows are going to go. I'm thinking that I might want some of her hair to flip back behind her head. So I think I'm going to go ahead and make these go this way. So instead of forward, it's kind of flipped to the side and kind of brushed back. I think that's where I'm going to go. Yeah. Hopefully my forehead's not getting in the way of the video. Okay. So. All right. So I'm probably going to do it to about here. All right. So before we head on, I'm going to block off where I would expect highlights to be in her hair before I cover them up with black, because that's just going to be a pain in the ass trying to fix that. So let's go ahead and not do that. So if I'm imagining how her hair is going to be, some of it's going to go behind her ear, some might peek out a little bit, whatever. Do some blocking however you want. But how I would picture the highlights, I would picture some highlights would probably going here. And I'd picture some highlights kind of going here. And then everything down here would be solid black. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and block off the black here and the black over here. Hey, baby. He's looking for some attention. Yeah, honey. Well, I'm shooting a video right now. Cute little thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and block it off. He's rubbing his face on my damn table. It's a good thing I don't have to pull any straight lines, you cute little bastard. He's staring at me. You know, cats really do get, they have a bad false reputation. Everybody says cats are assholes. I beg to differ. My cat is a fucking sweetheart. And he's a mama's boy. He loves to be around me. Stalks me when I'm in my room, and I won't let him in my room. He just lingers right outside my damn door. Definitely not one of those cats where he can't be bothered with you. He definitely wants to be all up in your shit all the time. Very social. Just a sweet fucking animal. Okay. I know this looks extremely scary. This is definitely, though, how I tattoo shit, so I promise it'll start to look like it's making sense. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and block off this. The only thing I have to be kind of mindful is my hands smearing everything. Okay. I think I'll go ahead and close this up a little bit more. Okay, so we basically did, you know what, fuck it, let's do over here too. I know this would be black. Usually though, with where there's eyelashes, if I did a beautiful eyelash on a pinup, you'll notice how I sometimes, I'll put like these random openings or like breaks in their hair. And that's just basically so I don't feel like I've wasted like drawing like this epic eyelash. We'll go ahead and bullshit a fucking opening right there. And if it doesn't work, we can always fill it in. It works sometimes. It doesn't always work, but whatever. She's got beautiful eyelashes over here, so maybe it's not even necessary. I'm sorry, you've had a glare almost this entire time, and I apologize. Okay. Okay, so, all right. So let's go ahead and move on to some highlights. I'm going to turn her this way just because it's kind of easier on me. So, basically, how I execute the highlights in the hair is almost pretty similar to how I would do a hairline. So, what I usually do is the same thing. I start moving strands of hair into each other. Okay. What you also want to do is you want to make sure that you soften this up, but you also too, I'll go in there and I'll add strands that actually connect. So go ahead and soften this line up. You don't want to see any hard lines going into this. That's that. And then some of them can connect. Whatevs. Okay? And then we'll do the same thing on this side. Just go in there, soften up that edge, make some that connect, whatever, until it gets to the very end. But make sure that you definitely get rid of a little hard line. But you see, now she's got a highlight. It is a little harder to eliminate the edges. If this were a tattoo, it'd be easier for me to do it, but it's not tattooing. And you rarely see me drawing anymore, which that's one thing I am glad about Patreon, is it has definitely forced me to start drawing again. Which is a beautiful thing, because I haven't been inspired to really draw much, and I'm glad that I am inspired now. So, okay, I just sometimes just... All right, so that's kind of like hair, sort of kind of going in between this way and this way, straight back. So same thing with this highlight right here. You want to make some strands that kind of go into that nice open space, softening up that black sort of edge. And you want to do it on the other, other side as well. Making some every so often, kind of just connect. This is also too the technique that I use when I'm painting my girls on, like, if I do like kind of more of a blockier pinup on cardboard and stuff. If you take a look at their hair is predominantly black with just like openings of highlights in it. But rest of it's like black, and then you'll just see like these, yeah, random highlights in their hair. One of the easiest ways for me to do brunettes. And you want them to have shiny fucking hair. Because, I mean, I guess shine can either go one of two ways. Either it could suggest healthy, or it can suggest just greasy. And hopefully it just looks like she has healthy hair. And maybe not so much greasy. All right. So let's go ahead and do her bangs. And I'll explain too why this is left open, but excuse me. Now let's go ahead and do her bangs. So we're doing her bangs. It's kind of the same thing. Just make sure when you're doing your hair strokes that it's heading in the way that her hair would flow. So this is going to have kind of a slight, like kind of a slight highlight. It's going to be, whew, her face is about to get really, 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 really. You can see that I'm not used to drawing anymore. I'm like smudging the shit out of her. Okay, so this portion of her hair that's leading into this really, really, really sharp highlight, it's probably going to be kind of a mixture of what I did over here and some shadows. there's so many different ways you can do this, but what I am going to do with this particular piece is execute that. And plus, maybe it's a good thing for you to practice that anyway, because it is also another technique on how to execute hair, depending on what it is that you're trying to go for. So, what I mean by that, I want this to be black. There, of course, there's ways to make shit nice and smooth, but that's what I mean. Just maybe with some cleaner edges. Now, one thing too that I like to do, which we're going to do here in a second, is I like clean edges and then I like not clean edges. Like every time I make like solid clean edges in hairs, I will go back and I'll add strays. Because it's hair, you know, her hair shouldn't be super duper perfect. We want strays. But yeah, if you look at some of my pinups, like my pinup tattoos and stuff, usually there's like random stray hairs on their head. And it's because it's supposed to, you know, you want to suggest that there are strands of hair. It's not just some towel that she stuck on her head or some perfectly sculpted wig. Like she actually has hair. And maybe there's a slight breeze and she didn't wear enough Aquanet. I don't know. Anyways, we don't want her to have helmet head. Helmet head is a no-no. So basically this highlight, the way this is going to kind of fade into this kind of weird sort of highlight that I did over here. I figure this part needed kind of like a, what is it? Happy medium. We'll go with that. Happy medium. Yep. Yep. Top of her damn hair. And then you can go in and do whatever you think looks good or whatever you think would make it look a little better. Add some here, subtract there. Like I said, luckily we're using pencils, so certain things can be erased where free-handed pinups, not so much. All right, so this little thing here that I did with her hair tucked behind her ear. So sometimes I'll do like these random strands of hair that are kind of like have a different highlight from everything else. But it's just to kind of just, like I said, I like things perfect, but then I like things kind of imperfect. And this is kind of the imperfection of her hair. So what I'll do sometimes is I will make the highlight in a strand of hair in a different place. So we'll move this down further and make the highlight kind of more like here. Just so it kind of just looks like some of the hair kind of came from behind her ear. Her ugly ass ear. This is like a Disney ear. It's an ear. I think that counts, right? Okay. So yeah, she's got a little separate strand of hair right here, and it's got its own highlight. So that's how you separate this section of hair from the back, is that you just move the highlight out of place. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so also when I do pinups, sometimes you'll see me do things I don't want to call it the lazy way, because, you know, I don't ever want people to think that I do lazy things on them. But sometimes I do, especially if we're at a time crunch. Maybe somebody's kind of more on a budget, or it's just not necessary to add all these details. So this side of her head that's kind of more in the background, gets a lot less attention usually than the foreground. And what I mean by that is sometimes I'll just go in and just fade the hair into the background on this side, or I'll just do it solid black with maybe just some highlights every now and again, where a lot of the hair on this side gets kind of more attention as far as highlights. So things that are kind of closer to the audience get more attention, and things kind of further back sort of don't really need it, especially when you have so much going on over here. It's kind of just sort of implied, or the mind just kind of just tricks you into thinking that what's happening over here is the same thing over here without even really doing any of the extra work. So that is definitely a perk of knowing how to manipulate the eyeball system. But what I'm talking about is, and I'm trying to think of a pinup that I've done that maybe people would know what I'm talking about. But like sometimes, like, so we marked out her curls here. Sometimes what I'll do is, and this is so much easier with the tattoo machine than it is a pencil, is that I would literally just shade. It's probably not going to translate the same on paper. It would if my shading on paper was a lot more, as, you know what, let's, fuck it. I don't like that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, she's still fucking pretty, so it doesn't matter. So, and I'm just doing this just to kind of just show you different techniques. And maybe you'll see them in my work and you'd be like, ah, that's what she did. It's like those types of like details that most people don't even notice unless I point it out, which is great. So everything close to her face is probably going to be pretty damn dark. Usually there's a shadow that I put underneath the chin to kind of make the face sort of pop off from the rest of the body. We'll add that here in a second. So yeah, I don't do all of them like this, but this is, like I said, it's just a kind of example. Of what can be done. This would probably look amazing, like an amazing watercolor effect. Because you know how you can kind of get away when you're doing like watercolor, kind of more of a washed out sort of look on certain things. I feel like this would be good for that. What I should have done as I was sketching this out was sprayed her with hairspray. It's amazing the things that you forget when you haven't drawn in a very long time. So a lot of the drawings that I used to do, people used to compliment me on how clean they were. And clean is because I would spray my drawings with either fixative or hairspray every so often. That way you don't get all the smudges like I'm getting right now. But since I haven't drawn in such a long time, that's definitely a detail that I totally forgot, or else I would have a can of fixative or hairspray sitting right next to me right now, but I don't. I guess with this, it's kind of more important that you get the idea of what it is that I'm doing more so than the... It's not like I'm going to sell her or anything. Okay, so this is her neck. Well, she definitely has like a chest and some boobs and stuff. Let's go ahead and just make a curl come down. Jody, actually, I just thought of somebody, actually, who is a Patreon subscriber of mine, Jody. I did this technique on your poison ivy. Partially one of the reasons why I did it on yours, though, is that we're eventually going to add color. So I'm not going to super darken out her hair. She's going to have color. But also, trying to execute a pinup in a day, especially when you want to add a million details, just isn't really realistic. We'd be there for like 20 fucking hours and still not done. That's definitely not what we want to do. But definitely the whole point is to get the point across. But yeah. Alrighty. Since I'm here, I'm gonna add a shadow under her neck. Or under, no, I'm sorry, not under her neck, under her chin. Just kind of raise the head off of the neck. You see? Such a really, really, really simple thing can make such a huge difference. The phone's picking up every stress. See, I have to keep looking in the phone to see what you see, because the phone is like picking up all these little marks that I can't see. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, if I had the time to sit here and make everything soft, I would. But I just wanted to make sure that you understood what was going on, as far as what I was talking about, as far as shadows and hair and the God, I don't even know what this effect would be called. Kind of more of an implied sort of hair with like via shadows. I don't know how you would describe that, or what you would call that, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. But yeah, anyways, the whole point was a lot of what I do on this side of the face, which would be kind of more on the background, doesn't really get nearly as much love as the stuff that's on the foreground. And to me, in my brain, it's just because it's kind of irrelevant. Like, you can sit there and do all that detail, but I mean, at least for me, you know, it hasn't really made much of a difference. I've done pinups where I just literally shaded this side and put highlights on this side, and nobody ever fucking notices. So, you know, whatever. Anywho, all right, so let's go ahead and do this side. So, so we want her to, we want her neck to kind of show a little bit. Baba. Oh, I love you too. I love you. I know. Okay, so let's go ahead and mark off where we want these curls to be. I know I want them to come forward, curl up, Curl down. Curls, but I definitely want her neck covered. Sometimes it's kind of difficult to figure out how you want this hair to be. Yeah, it can come out to here. Why not? And then it can flow and down this way. Okay. Sweet. All right, so down here is basically going to be executed like how we did up here. So where there's curls that come up, you want to keep in mind where those highlights are going to go. So right now I'm just kind of marking out where I would expect highlights to be. Everything else for the most part is going to be black. There's going to be openings in her hair. And then we're going to go back and we're going to add a few more of these stray hairs just so it just doesn't look too perfect. Like I said, we don't want her to have helmet head. Helmet head's not pretty. So I marked this in the wrong space part. I want the highlight to be in here. Okay. So okay. So all this right here gonna be black. Black, black, black. Yes, I told you to get in the habit of drawing in the direction of hair. No, though sometimes the rules can be bent. Okay. All right. So the rest of this curl gonna come up like this. So this is gonna be where kind of the more inside of the curl is gonna get the highlight. So this. Sometimes at the ends of these curls too, you'll see me do like kind of strays. Just to kind of make them not look too perfect. Now, if this were a portrait sort of tutorial, we'd be here for a good 15 hours on hair alone, especially with the brunette. All those highlights and random hairs going everywhere. So I don't know how far everybody's kind of followed my damn art career, but I used to be a portrait artist. I'd be one of those fools that would sit there and draw a person's face for 20 fucking hours just to make it look like it's been run off of a copier, which there's definitely a use for that skill. You got that kind of skill, it's easier for you to see shapes, and a lot of things are made out of shapes. But when it comes to tattooing, at least in my experience, you don't really need to draw portraits because we usually take our stencils off of portraits. And I think in a sense, after knowing that, it's kind of like soured me from doing portraits, I guess. They just didn't become challenging for me anymore. But I know that's not the case for everybody else. I kind of like to do things that are a little bit more organic and not so this has to look like this or this, like, that's why I started doing the freehand pinups, like kind of one of those, yeah, I don't know what the hell she's going to look like and you don't know what the hell she's going to look like, and this is going to be fun trying to figure it out together while I'm permanently marking your body. YOLO. So it's the same thing as the top. We're going into this highlight by softening these edges and bringing each side together with these hair strokes. So I guess so much as far as like the black blocking, it's probably not as important for the hair strokes to go in the direction of the hair as the highlight strokes. The highlight strokes, for sure, you want it to be in the direction of the hair, or else it's definitely going to look off. Hey, get down. No, off the table. Get down. Be a good boy. He's curious as to what we're doing here. I've got a painting that's kind of drying The last thing we want is cat hair sticking to my paint. It's taken me such a long time to find the time to paint this damn thing. You don't know, cat coming in with one fell swoop and just ruining it all. Huh, kitty? Okay, so there's one curl. Let's just go in and do the rest of them. And this one's kind of gonna curl up this way. So, okay, there's another thing to mention too. So when I have like two kind of like strips of hair, not strips, well, two sections of hair. So I have this section and then I have this section. If I went in and just like block this off all willy-nilly, you're not going to be able to see the separation. So sometimes what I'll do is how I would separate them is just kind of just leave just like a little bit of a gap between the two. And it doesn't have to be a huge gap. As a matter of fact, you could even like connect it at some point so it looks a little like it's not there, I guess. I don't know. Again, I feel like it's one of those details that most people don't even like see, honestly, but it's there. And it makes the brain kind of it helps the brain to make it make sense. Okay. Maybe a little less than that. You don't want it to be like obvious. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Maybe just a little, it's kind of like an implied line gap. Boom, that works. All right. Now this curl does kind of a little different of a thing. As a matter of fact, we're gonna go ahead and add 2 highlights on this strand of hair. Just because we can. We can do what we want. Okay. And this one's kind of less of a highlight, but it's still there. Okay. So the same thing over here, maybe just a little bit of a gap. Maybe we can even connect it to the highlight that's in the front of the curls. Okay, we just got highlights. And I'm doing this the fast way because this is a video and I want you to get the idea, but definitely pause the video and take your time on this. You know, I have a reason to rush. you don't have a reason to rush. So don't rush. I want your pictures to look amazing, you know. One of my friends, Steve, hi Steve, sent me a text message of his drawing, of course, before we added the hair. And it's really cool because his drawing looked a lot like mine, and he claims that he hasn't drawn a pinup in a long time, which I call bullshit because it turned out really good. But it is cool to see how people's stuff turns out. So if you want to send me what you did, I mean, hell yeah, I would love to be able to see how your pinup girl turned out, or your pinup head. Yeah, let's get the faces down so we can start drawing boobies. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the rest. A lot of times too, like the bottoms of hair, if you're working in an industry again where sometimes adding a lot of detail just isn't cost effective, and you want to do things to kind of like, I don't know, help people to be able to afford you, there is definitely things that you can do to kind of like, I hate to say bullshit, but it is kind of bullshit. Bullshit your way to an ending. That way they're not spending, you know, another grand on things that kind of just doesn't matter as much. If you're working on paper, you can still get away with it. It's just, it just depends on how it's executed. Like the person who's buying the piece doesn't need to know you ended it that way just because, you know, you wanted to move on to other things. And if you want to do all that detail, do all that detail. Fuck it. You know, it's your piece. But sometimes, like, I guess what, going into that, the reason why I was mentioning it is because sometimes on the ends of hair, like say if I was to do like a pinup bust, sometimes the ends of the hair, it kind of just adds and fades the same way this would fade. And it's because I just don't see any reason to add a million details on these little curls or anything that fades into the skin. And sometimes things that fade into the skin, it just looks better to end it that way. It looks like it's on the skin, like it's part of the skin. Whereas this up here looks like it's a little bit more detached from the canvas or the paper or the skin. This right here, when you sort of fade things into the skin, it kind of gives the tattoo kind of more of a sense of being attached to the actual canvas, if that makes sense. I don't know how else to explain it, but when you fade things into skin, it becomes the skin. Like it just visually just becomes it. And again, you're not spending a million hours on these little details that when you can come up with something that looks a little, that looks just as good in, you know, as a quarter of the time spent. But that's just the tattoo artist and me talking. Again, different media, it may not matter as much, but if you're doing like pinups on people and stuff and you are charging a lot of money per hour, sometimes it is nice to kind of give people a break on things that, you know, they're not coming to you for perfect hair. They're coming to you for a beautiful pinup. Her hair doesn't, you don't have to see every single strand for her to be gorgeous. So, you know, sometimes hair is just fucking irrelevant. So anyways, we're going to do kind of a little fade at the end. You know, just try to, when you do stuff like that though, do make the ends kind of, I don't like the way I did that. You know, just make it look interesting. Like make the shape at the end of the hair interesting. That way, you know, you're not really sacrificing like the visual part of it. You're just kind of just sacrificing the detail of it. One of these reasons why I've had to kind of develop these sort of techniques where it's kind of faster is because, you know, like without what is it? Not sacrificing, but without God, I'm searching for the word. I'm sorry. I want people who don't have this crazy budget to be able to afford my stuff without, you know, shooting myself in the foot. Because I have kids, you know, I have bills to pay. I go to school, you know, like I can't afford to give people, you know, super cheap tattoos just because they want them. But at the same time, I do like it when people collect, you know, my pinups from me. So I do try to find like different ways to make beautiful women. And you can get this expensive girl, you know, who has all these strands, or you can get this girl who doesn't have, you know, all these little details, but she's just as gorgeous. It just really just also depends too on what's important to the client, because not all clients come to me for these crazy detailed pinups. Sometimes they just want my work on them. And if they are not coming with thousands of freaking dollars, you know, I'm going to put my work on them, and we're going to come up with a compromise. You know, like you're going to get somebody who's beautiful. You're just not going to get the Mercedes Benz. You're going to get more of the Honda Civic, and that's fine. You know, still a really good fucking car. So yes, throughout the course of my career, not only because I'm a fucking anal retentive Virgo, you know, who nitpicks everything that she does. Not only have I've had to come up with stuff like that, but also learn to leave well enough alone. Because if I were given the time and the opportunity, I'd be staring at this chick and ripping her apart. There'd be a million things about this sketch that I would hate. I've had to turn that off about myself. Like, I've had to work over the years turning off that perfectionist side, because honestly, people don't fucking give a shit. Like, some of the things that we think are important as artists, the consumer doesn't care. And you have to really kind of sort of think about what is important to them, you know? So, no, kind of just went on a rant. Those of you who aren't tattooers probably are just like, what is she talking about? But, and maybe it does pertain to your business. There is a couple other artists that follow me too. It's just, I don't know your business well enough to really say if it's the same thing. But as far as tattooing goes, you know, some people want detail, some people don't. They just want something that's visually pleasing. And you just have to figure out what's more important. Definitely hairlines. Hairlines are important. If I were you, I would not skimp on the whole hairline thing, because I've seen some fucked up edges on pinups, and it does drive me nuts. Everything else, though, maybe not. Someone doesn't drive me not as much nuts as it used to. Thank God. There's nothing worse than spending 7 hours on a sketch, thinking that you're doing everything right just to show it to a client, and the thing that you've been stressing out about, they literally don't give a shit, and then on top of that, change it. They want you to change it, and it's just like, you've got to be shitting me. But yeah. Okay, so yeah, I think after I'm done with this video, I probably am going to go through her and probably add a few things and take away and stuff, but I just wanted to get the basics down. Yeah, I can see myself tweaking out on this damn thing. So, okay, so basically this is her hair. So like I said before, sometimes I do like to go back and add strays. This is like stray little rogue strands of hair. It just makes it look a little bit more natural, and there doesn't have to be a million of them. There just has to be enough of them. And as far as tattooing goes, it's really easy freaking detail to add. I forgot this strand, huh? But yeah, just going in there and just like adding these small details again. People, a lot of times they don't catch these things. But this is the one thing on pinups that I probably don't sacrifice. Again, it's all depends on what's important to the person, what's important to the client, but this is definitely one thing that you won't see me skimp on too much is stray freaking hairs. We like the strays. Yeah, she's a beautiful girl. There you go. Now, let's see. Let's go ahead. You see how it kind of frames her head? Kind of just sort of, like I said, implies that she goes further down. All right, so I want to go ahead and add a couple more details. I know to her face. I know my hand kind of wiped away a lot of her detail, but so one thing that I definitely wanted to add onto her face is she needs cheekbones. Cheekbones are definitely important. Ah! Crap. Whoopsie. Just gonna lightly take an eraser and see if we can. Actually, it kind of shaped into what I was gonna do. It's just I gotta erase the part that's not supposed to be there. Nah. Oh, bad. It just doesn't look good. Yikes. Well, no, definitely don't do that. Don't do what I just did, but definitely add cheekbones. God, I remember I used to have such a light hand at drawing. Let me not smudge anymore. Hopefully you are a little bit more careful than me and you don't have to go back and add all the other details that your hand simply erased. We did add a lot of black too, so I know it's really easy to do. Oh, I'm sorry if my big ass head is in the way. Yeah, she's really pretty though. She turned out nice. I think that if I were to tattoo her on somebody, they would be happy. I always tell people, like, you know, when you're looking for a pinup artist, definitely pay attention to faces, because even if her body doesn't look all that great, better to have a woman with an okay body than a woman with a gorgeous body in a butter face. At least with pinups. Your love life doesn't matter, but with tattooing and shit, it does matter how that face looks, big time. And I've seen a lot of butter faces, unfortunately, on people. And I fixed a couple, actually. I've been able to overlay details over people's pinups. Just not all of them are salvageable. So you definitely have to pay attention to whether or not a person can pull off a lovely face. Yeah. That's her. Yeah. I'm probably going to go in there and tighten up a lot of this shit. But anywho, I hope that this helped. I tried to show you, I think I showed you at least 3 different versions of shading a brunette. As far as blondes go, it's just, it's kind of the same concept, just not as involved. You don't have to pack in a bunch of black. I mean, you might pack in black along the side of the face and then have it fade to blonde, just so, you know, the face kind of separates from the rest of the image. But for the most part, it's not nearly as involved. But I definitely hope this helps. I do have some suggestions on other videos, and maybe I might cover like straight hair. Maybe I might cover, I don't know. We'll figure it out. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying not to do things that just help tattooers out. I want to be able to help out anybody who plans to draw. So I thought about doing a rose series. The roses are pretty easy. But I also want to do different, like, I think definitely need to cover like a full like a front face sort of view. I think that would probably be a good one that other people can benefit from. Oh, here's another thing too, if you want to go and add these details. add shadows underneath her hair. That'll definitely make it kind of pop off the canvas. Like, again, I'm doing it the fast way, so it doesn't really look as good, but oh, I think we pulled off a very attractive lady, which is very, very important. Let me get this off of here. I'll let you take a closer look at her. I hope you enjoy this video. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.